Hello, dear listeners. Here is Andre Branco, and you are on the channel Souls Gemini. Today I bring you a story that will play deep in my heart. Get ready to dive into this narrative that speaks of love, pain, and choices that change lives. Marianne was gently passing her fingers over the frame of that special photo, the ultrasound that revealed a tiny heartbeat. Even after 3 months of that fateful afternoon, when the doctor shook his head with grief and spoke words that divided his existence into before and after, she didn't have the courage to get rid of the image. Dennis, her husband, tightened her hand that day, repeating like a mantra that everything would look good, who would try again, that was not the end of the world. But his eyes, traitors, revealed a disappointment that the words could not hide. 12 weeks. Such a short time and at the same time, so intense. Enough to love with all the soul. Insufficient to accept the loss. Marianne gradually rebuilt, not just in the body, but in the soul. In the early weeks, he barely left the room, lost in a void that immobilized her. Depression enveloped her like a heavy shroud, holding her to bed. Dennis took a vacation for a week, but then returned to work, distant, as if an abyss opened between them. The new apartment, once a symbol of pride and a future together, now looked like a cold, empty box. Dennis arrived later and later, and Marianne no longer had the strength to prepare dinner as before. No hunger felt. Her routine boiled down to a boring path: bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, where she made a quick tea and fell back under the covers. Until the day came when everything changed. Dennis arrived early, with a decided expression on his face. Marianne was in the kitchen, stirring aimlessly in a cup of cold tea. "I called my mother," he announced bluntly. "She comes next week." Marianne looked at him confused. "Why? Just a visit?" "No, it's definitive," Dennis cut. "Or rather, until you rise. Look at you, Marianne, look at this house. Someone needs to take the reins." "I realize." She tried to protest softly. "I just need a little more time." "How much?" "A month. 2. 6. Dennis's voice sounded angry. "I get home and find an empty house, without dinner, with dirty dishes. I know you're in mourning, but life continues." "I'm mourning too." For the first time in months, Marianne felt something beyond apathy, a burning anger. "We are mourning, Dennis. We lost our son." He looked away, avoiding looking at her. "At least my mother knows how to cook, unlike some people." The decision was made. Galina Stefanovna would move there. "I already talked to her about everything." Those words hurt more than a slap. Marianne looked at the man with whom he had divided 4 years old and did not recognize him. Galina, the woman who from the first meeting she treated her with disdain, considering her unworthy of her only son. The same one who, in marriage, solemnly ignored Marianne's parents. The woman who called every day just to know how her little boy was. "You didn't even consult me." Marianne felt her throat tighten. "This is also my home." "It would be, if you took care of it," Dennis countered dry. "Mom arrives in 3 days. Arrange there." These 3 days were a blur. Marianne tried to talk to her husband, but he dodged any serious conversation, as if he had said goodbye to her in thought. On Monday, punctually at noon, Galina appeared at the door, with Dennis carrying his bags. He had taken the day to receive her, something he had never done for Marianne. "Good morning, my daughter-in-law," said the mother-in-law with a fake smile, examining Marianne from top to bottom. "I see that you have gone through difficult times. But now I'm here. Everything will fix it." Without waiting for an answer, he broke into the apartment, already giving orders. "Dennis, take these bags to the room of visits." "My God, how much powder." "Marianne, couldn't you have done a basic cleaning before my arrival?" Marianne watched silently while the woman took over the house as a owner, pursing her nose to the dirty dishes and the bed messy. Dennis ran around her mother, eager to serve her in everything. Still on the first night, Galina reorganized the kitchen to her taste, criticizing every detail while preparing dinner. "Amazing how you lived in this mess. Spices are kept like this, don't throw anywhere. And why just a cutting board? That's antigenic." In the first decent meal in weeks, Marianne barely touched the food. The ground beef was too salty, but Dennis praised the enthusiastic mother. "This is real food. How I missed your dishes, Mother. Galina shone with satisfaction. Of course, my son. I always said that a wife should know how to cook. It's the basis of a happy home. Marian got up from the table without a word and went to the room, closing the door. No one tried to stop her. The following weeks turned into a nightmare. Galina assumed absolute control. He woke up before everyone, making noise in the kitchen while preparing the breakfast for his boy. Marianne was ignored at most. She received a cold omelette or nothing. Every day they started with an affected call. Dennis, coffee is ready, time to wake up, my love. When Marianne finally found the strength to get out of depression and try to resume life, she found that there was no room for her in that new reality. Galina not only dominated the kitchen, but the whole house. His belongings appeared in the bathroom, in the closet, in the living room. Pictures of Dennis Krianka replaced the couple's photos. Even the TV now only passed the mother-in-law's favorite channels. How about we go to the cinema tonight? Marianne tried once, hoping to regain her husband. Today it is not possible, said Dennis, indifferent. Mom made an apple pie. My favorite. Let's have tea later. Something within Marianne broke. Her husband, the man who swore to love and protect her, had become an obedient son, allowing his mother to expel her from her life. The trigger came when, after his first trip to the market in months, Marianne found that Galina had played outside the photo of the ultrasound she had so much. What to keep memories of failures? He shrugged his mother-in-law in the face of Marianne's desperation. I just reopen wounds. I've told Dennis that you needed a psychologist, not keeping junk. It was my son, shouted Marianne, suffocated by tears. Our son, me and Dennis. It was, but it is gone, Galina cut cruel. And it is not even known if it was his way of living. Marianne froze, incredulously. That's when Dennis entered. What's going on here? He asked, frowning. Your mother threw away our baby's ultrasound picture, Marianne said, with a trembling voice. And he has just suggested that I betrayed you. She expected indignation, support, defense, anything but what she heard. Mom is right, said Dennis. You need to leave the past behind. Maybe you really should look for a psychologist. I'm tired of your depression. Those words were like a knife in the chest. Something inside her left for good. Marianne didn't cry, she didn't shouted, just got up with a calm that scared to herself. He walked to the bedroom, opened the closet and pulled his bag from the bottom. He began to pack his things with mechanical movements, as if his body already knew what to do even before his mind processed the pain. What are you doing? Dennis watched her from the door, his voice tense, but without the urgency of those who really want to stop her. Going away, she said, without looking back. You made your choice, Dennis. He chose his mother, not his wife. Now live both together, cook together, watch television. There is no more room for me here. Are you being dramatic? Galina Stepanovna intervened, crossing her arms at the entrance of the room. I always knew you weren't worthy of my son. Dennis, don't hold her. You will find a decent, good family girl who will give you healthy children. Marianne waited. He waited for him to defend her, to say anything. But Dennis just lowered his eyes, and that silence was more cruel than all the words of Galina. He finished closing his suitcase, called a taxi on his cell phone and, without looking at them once again, went out the door that would never cross as owner of those spaces. Dennis left the numb only when he heard the noise of the car moving away. He ran to the sidewalk, barefoot, the shirt in half-butt. Marianne, wait. Let's talk, he shouted, but his voice sounded weak, without conviction. Maybe you're exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating, Dennis, she replied, already inside the taxi, with a calm that terrified him. I'm leaving a man who cheated on me at the hardest time of my life. Who chose his mother instead of his own family. Divorce papers arrive by mail. The car walked away, taking with it 4 years of shared life, undone dreams, and a pain that she swore would never let her define her. I didn't know where to go, whether to parents, for a friend, or just for a cheap hotel where he could cry alone. He ended up in the room of his childhood, where his mother hugged her without asking questions and her father, with his fists clenched, murmured only, I always said that that boy was a boy of Mom. But you loved him, and we respect your choice. The following week Marianne began to rebuild himself. He returned to the work he had abandoned after the abortion, made an appointment with a psychologist and gradually emerged from darkness not only for the loss of his son, but for the ruin of a marriage he now saw. He never had enough roots to survive the first storm. Dennis called several times. She didn't answer. One afternoon, he appeared at her parents' house, but her father barred him at the door. She doesn't want to see him. And he added, with a cold look, and I understand it. Tell her that my mother returned to the village, Dennis muttered, as if those words could fix something. May she come home? She already has another home. It was the dry answer. And another life. 3 months later, the divorce papers arrived. Everything was fast. There were no children, there were no goods to share. The house was his before the marriage. Marianne complained nothing, although her lawyer insisted that she was entitled to compensation. I don't want anything from him, he said, signing the documents with firm hands. Almost a year has passed. Marianne, now stronger, rediscovered a former Dennis colleague in a mall. I heard news, the woman said, with a tone between curiosity and pity. Dennis resigned and went to live with his mother in the village. She got sick, needs constant care, and he dropped everything. They say it opened a small business there. Marianne nodded, without feeling either triumph or mercy. It was predictable. Galina Stepanovna, never lonely your boy. 5 years later, Marianne was sitting in a warm coffee, waiting for Artem, the man she had married 2 years earlier. He had known him in a support group for people who lost loved ones. He had also had a divorce after his daughter's death, when the mourning had irreparably away. Now they were waiting for the birth of their first child together. The doctors guaranteed that this time everything would be fine. She caressed her rounded belly, smiling at her own thoughts when she saw him. Dennis, aged beyond his years, the curved shoulders, the tired eyes. He hesitated for a second, but ended up approaching the table. Hello, he said, with a voice that no longer had the security of before. You look beautiful. Thank you, Marianne answered, Serena. Are you in Moscow for work? Yes. Things are. Solver. He made a vacant gesture with his hand. I live in the village now, with my mother. She had a stroke. I take care of her. Marianne just nodded. I understand. And then, as if he only realized, he looked at his belly. Congratulations. Thanks. The silence extended, uncomfortable. Dennis seemed to mean more, but was interrupted by the arrival of Artem, tall, safe, with a smile that illuminated the environment. Sorry for the delay, he said, kissing Marianne on the cheek before staring at him with curiosity. You must be Dennis. Yes, he confirmed, squeezing his extended hand. The ex-husband. And this is Artem, my husband, Marianne introduced without embarrassment. The two men exchanged a handshake. Dennis seemed diminished there, as if the weight of his choices had bent him forever. Well, I won't disturb, he murmured, already moving away. It was good to see her, Marianne. All the best. He was gone, and every step seemed to grow older. Are you well? Artem asked, worried, as soon as they were alone. She smiled, sincere. Sometimes you just need to see how things could have been to value as they are. That night, while nestling next to Artem, feeling the baby's movements inside him, Marianne received a message of an unknown number. Forgive me. I chose the wrong woman and spent my life regretting it. You deserved much more. D. She showed the Artem. Will you answer? He asked, without a shred of jealousy or insecurity. Marianne shook her head. No. Some stories are better left in the past. She turned off her cell phone and snuggled against her husband's chest, listening to the constant rhythm of her heart. Galina and Dennis now cooked together in the village, reaping exactly what they had planted. Each one receives what they choose. And she had finally chosen herself.